Do I start?
We are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you're in. I hope you're in the best of your spirits and you are thriving and not just surviving. Welcome to yet another episode of Bizverds. Bizverds is our initiative to bring industry experts, specialists, coaches, consultants, functional specialists to bring the best ideas and best insights for you during these times when we are all at home, working from home, some in lockdown, some not in lockdown. And this initiative have been appreciated by many, and thank you for that. Um, I'm going to introduce our guest today. But before that, the topic is something which is interesting as well as challenging. We would be talking about fear, overwhelm, anxiety, which is very human, but some shy away from it with all the taboos attached to it. Some talk about how it imprisons you and makes it very crippling and leads you to inaction, procrastination, and a lot of worry. And yet, some talk about how it's just a false mental construct and it's just not there, it's just in your head. I have with me Corina, who's an expert. So I won't go into a lot of details. We'll just have a conversation with her. Corina, thank you for joining us from UK. All my viewers who are online right now, please do drop in your name and which city you are coming in from so we can, and probably just say hi to me and Corina. Corina, before we get on with our conversation, with our chat, can you give a little brief introduction of who you are and what you've been up to these days?
Hi, Noman. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. I'm really excited to be here with you and to be talking about this topic because, as you say, it is just so very, very important. And there's so many people struggling right now with anxiety. In fact, anxiety, even before the crisis, was the biggest mental health concern worldwide, and that is even growing now. So it is a big topic. So I'm excited to talk about it. Thank you very much. And just to give you a very quick background to what I do, I'm a hypnotherapist, I'm a psychotherapist, I'm a coach, I'm a counselor, and I specialize in helping senior executives to eliminate anxiety so that they can maximize performance and be the calm, confident leaders that they want to be. So that's a very quick background to what I do.
Great. I think you were very humble about your background. Corina has been working with leaders in Europe, in UAE, in the Middle East, and helping them, coaching them deal with human issues, because leadership, end of the day, is all about being human. Corina, we have Mariam Arsalan. She's saying hello. We have Shaina. Shaina is a very, very regular viewer of ours. We have Ahmed, a good friend. We have Farhad. He's a colleague of mine. He's joining us from Funworks. We have Parvez, and we have Ahmed joining us from Adelaide. So all the way from Australia, I believe. That's where it must be late at night over there. Thank you, Ahmed, for joining in. All those who are here, please do drop in your name and say hello to us. Tell us which city you're from. Also, in the second segment, we'll be doing a Q&A with Corina. So any questions that you have, please feel free to put them in the comments box and I will take it with Corina. Your name, Corina, is interesting, yeah, especially in these days. I think I did meet you also once, and then you wrote back, "I'm not Corona, I'm Corina." So pretty dangerous. And there's a very old Pakistani song which talks about a girl called Corina. So it goes like Coco Corina. So it's a very, very interesting name. So yeah, Corina, tell us a little bit about what is anxiety.
Right. So anxiety really is a survival mechanism. We all have it and we all need it, because without a certain amount of anxiety, we wouldn't have survived as a species. So, our ancestors, for example, when they're going through the bush, they constantly have to be alert. It's almost like having a radar around our bodies, because, they need to listen, they need to look for any sound, any sight of a dangerous animal. Now, nowadays, of course, we don't, very rarely do we come across a dangerous animal.
True.
But but we have our modern day stresses to which we respond in the same way. So, and that is basically what causes us to feel anxious. It's called the fight and flight response. And when this fight and flight response is released, it releases a whole cocktail of hormones in our body, which are purely for survival. So everything else shuts down. Our critical thinking, analytical mind shuts down. Our digestive system shuts down. Everything shuts down and prepares us for survival so that we can either fight this wild animal or run for our lives, right?
Right.
And nowadays, when we are faced with stresses like our work stress, our emotional stress, corona stress, we feel like there's nothing we can do. And so our body is releasing these hormones because we're going into survival mode. We're in fear. And all of these hormones are circulated around our bodies all the time. But there's no point where they are released. And that's what gives us this feeling of anxiety, the fear in our stomach, or the dizziness in the head, or wherever you feel that anxiety, the shaky feeling, that shaky feeling that you get?
Yeah.
And that's because we've got an overload of these hormones circulating in our bodies, and it's not being released. And that's also what makes us ill in the end.
Right.
And so a certain amount of anxiety is natural, and we need it for survival. As I said, it's like that radar that we have, like a car alarm, for example. I come from South Africa, and in the 90s, everybody used to have a car alarm. And these car alarms were going off like every minute. Somebody's car alarm would be going off, So, and anxiety is very much like that. It's a protective mechanism for our body for survival. So we need it, and we need that. We need our bodies to kind of watch out for us and be alert. But we don't want it to go off every time the wind blows.
Right.
Because then it's no longer helping us. Then it's kind of defeating our own purposes. And so when anxiety becomes so bad that it's controlling our lives, that's when it becomes a problem. When we become too afraid to go out, we become too afraid to speak to somebody. We have panic attacks. We're constantly worrying about the next, what's going to happen if. That's when anxiety becomes a problem.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. So when it cripples you, that's when it becomes a problem. And you spoke about the beasts of the past, which is why our body is such. We don't have the same beasts today. There's no lion following me, but there are deadlines, and then there is losing the job. So the beasts have just changed. They've transformed into something completely different, but our body mechanism is still the same. So,
exactly.
So we have this sudden fear of losing a job right now, or probably being jobless. What would happen to my future? Or being working from home and being completely overwhelmed by a lot of other things. So those beasts are there. And I think you gave an interesting example of the car alarm. I come from Pakistan, and it's still there. So if somebody fidgets with your car, then the pom 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 starts, right? So it's not just the thief, but even if somebody is there to harm or take away something from your car. So that's amazing. So there is any external stimuli, the body starts acting like the car alarm. Interesting.
Exactly. And now we can create that stimuli for ourselves internally by our thoughts.
Right.
Because we start to think and we start to worry. As you said, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if I can never leave my house again? What's going to happen if, I don't know, all the shops are going to close and we're not going to get any food ever again? Or I'm going to die and I'm going to lose my job, or I'm never going to see my kids, whatever, and those thoughts start to escalate in our mind, and that monster becomes bigger and bigger, and the fear grows.
Right, right. So the beast may be very small, but we think there's a huge beast probably following us. And as I said in the beginning, a friend of mine, Amin, he's that's an interesting display pic. Amin, by the way, that's his Facebook pic. He was a very senior executive in Emirates, retired, took an early retirement. He's doing a big business right now. He said there's no such thing. And then as I said, a lot of people do say that there's no such thing like anxiety, but you made a very important point: anxiety and worry. There are two different things, right? So tell us a little bit about anxiety versus worry. Anxiety is a body thing. Is worry also something built in us?
Anxiety, worry is in our head. Worry is like, oh, for goodness sake, what am I going to make for dinner tonight? What what am I going to?
You remind me of your wife, yeah.
Those things that you worry about, but it's a worry, but it's not a major thing. But anxiety is really when you start, because when you start to feel it in your body. Anxiety happens in your head and in your body. And as I explained to you earlier when we were chatting, some people, it starts in the head. It will be that thought that starts. And it goes, oh my gosh, what if, and what if? And then you start to feel the feelings in your body. Or it may be that you feel that feeling in your body first, and then you go, oh, there's that feeling, and then the thoughts start. So it can be either or. But anxiety is very much body and mind. And worry, it's really just in your mind.
So there is no such thing as worry. It's just a false mental construct, or is it?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's not real, because I think we all have worries and we all have issues and we all have concerns, and those are real. So it's not to say that they don't exist. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, it becomes a problem when it starts to really control your life, and you're constantly in that state of worry, in that state of fear, in that state of overwhelm, and you just, you're constantly going, oh my God, what? Or you're feeling those feelings of panic, and, that's when it becomes a worry. That's when it becomes a problem. Does that make sense?
That's when it becomes dangerous. That's when it starts to cripple you. That's when it takes over you, and all your human strengths just go behind the scenes, and you're just probably running from a beast which may not exist, or maybe the small cat and you think it's a big tiger to take you. So
exactly.
So that's just
absolutely.
Yeah, and we would be coming into with practical tips to handle anxiety. We have people joining in and sending questions. That's great. Thank you, guys. Do send in questions in segment 2. We would take the questions we have. I believe this is a friend of yours, soaring eagles.
Yes.
That's from South Africa.
That's my friend Peter from South Africa.
Yeah, great.
Hi, Peter.
Peter,
thanks for being here.
Too. Right, amazing. Raza is a friend. He says, great subject, Noman. It is very interesting. Raza, hang in. You would really find it very interesting. Just hang in for another half an hour. You would get even more interesting insights. So Qarina, this is a beast. The evolution, the beasts attacking, the fear and the flight mode getting activated, releasing hormones that would just make you run to survive or probably fight back. The beasts have changed, but the system still remains the same. I hope our body will have probably developed new hormones, but not necessarily the case yet. So the beasts are now workload. The beasts are about being constantly doing what I'm supposed to, constantly being worrying about work, not being able to disengage from work. With these Corona and COVID times, a lot of us have probably felt truly for the first time intensely the fear, even the overwhelm, because working from home was not something which we were all habitual to. So how does working from home and overwhelm gets linked, and how do you think we can address ourselves or deal with it?
Well, I think working from home is, as you said, it's such a new experience for so many people, because as a society, as humans, we're social beings. So we need we need to be able to interact. And up to now, that a lot of that has happened in the office. And now people are at home, so they're isolated from their normal kind of social interactions. And they're also finding that all these demands that they have when they're at home, on top of what they have from work, becomes overwhelming. So all of a sudden they have, they've got kids at home, they've got wives or husbands at home 24/7. I mean, you might love your partner, but we weren't meant to be together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, So that's a challenge. And then, then you've got to try and help your kids with homework that most parents are not equipped to do. So you're trying to be a teacher, a parent, maybe run a business or work your job. And suddenly everything just starts to, merge into each other.
Right.
And that becomes stressful and overwhelming.
Yeah.
And again, all of this, all of these feelings start to emerge, the feelings and the thoughts. So, I think for working from home, there's a couple of tips that I would give, and then maybe address how to deal with the anxiety, or which way would you like me to do it? I'll do it that way. So if you're working from home, I think one of the first things to do is really to set boundaries between home time and work time. So you have your office hours, and after office hours, you go home. If it's possible for you, have a separate workspace. So you're not mixing work and dinner and kids and everything together. It might not be possible, in which case you just got to do the best that you can do. But, have routines, have breaks, and learn to relax, which will bring me to how we deal with anxiety. I think that's the most important, yeah?
Just before that, we have these beasts, right? Work time, office time, and then you have the boss. And then you have my manager. And we'll talk about how a manager can help us team fight with anxiety. But then there is expectation. Sadly, the manager would wake up at 11 in the night and say, okay, I need this. And then I'm into action. And if I don't do it, then I probably have all these thoughts building up. What if? And I think that's detailed separate discussion of how teams need to start working remotely and create those boundaries. But yeah, you have those beasts still active, right?
Absolutely. And that's where we can actually start and say, okay, when all of these things are happening, these beasts are, becoming active, the first thing actually to do is to just stop. And you can literally say to yourself or out loud, you can go, stop, just like that. And then you just take a deep breath in. And if you're with me or whoever's there, you can actually just do this with me right now. Just take a deep breath in.
Let's try it, right? So what I'm gonna do is I will take myself off the screen. I'll give you the whole screen to you. Give us these tips, and then I think later on we will talk about breathing, because everybody says take a deep breath in, and as you said, stop. So I usually do that. I would say, Noman, stop it. It's not that big. Noman, stop it. So you're right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take myself off screen, share the tips to manage anxiety, because we promise people that this would not be just a conversation, it will be a practical session. So let's go through that. Yeah. All right. Here you go.
Okay. Absolutely. Excellent. Great. Okay. So the first thing to do when you start feeling these feelings in your body, these thoughts in your mind, whatever it is, the first thing to do is just to go stop. And then, as I said, you can do it out loud or you can do it in your mind, but then you take a nice deep breath in. So just do that with me right now. Take a nice deep breath in and then just breathe out. And you'll feel immediately that you're starting to calm down. And the reason for this is that our breath is the only conscious connection that we have to our subconscious mind. Everything else, or 90% of everything else that we do, runs on auto mode. So our breathing, we do it all the time without thinking about it. All our bodily functions, they happen without thinking about it. We just do it. But our breath is actually one thing that we can consciously take control of and regulate. And when we do that, what happens is that all those stress hormones that we were talking about before start to come back into balance. So the breath is such an important part of bringing your body back into balance. And that's why you will immediately feel better once you take that deep breath in and just breathe out. And make sure your breath out is longer than your breath in. And you can do it a couple of times. You don't just have to do it once. You can do it a couple of times. So that's the first thing. The second thing
The first step is just simple breathing, right? Deep breathe in, breathe out. What everybody tells us, just start trying it. So yeah, what's the tip number 2?
Right. The tip number 2 is, again, this is actually one of my favorites, and it's so powerful, but super simple. We can all do it. And basically, it is to just focus and think about what you can control and what you can do. Because up to now, everything we've been doing is thinking about that monster and what is he going to do, and the coronavirus, and how is it going to grow, and what's going to be the next regulation, and what else is the government going to tell us, and what can I not do, and what else, and this monster is growing and growing. We can't control any of that. What we can control is where we put our mind. What are we going to think about? What are we going to feel? That is what we can control. So thinking about, actually, okay, let's say, for example, the thing about I might lose my job. Now, that's a very real concern. It's a very real worry for a lot of people. And it may or may not happen. We don't know. Yeah. But what can I do right now? I can sit here and I can worry and I can feel anxious and I can feel terrible about the fact that this might happen. And actually, very often, 90% of the time, all those things that we worry about never actually do happen. So what am I going to do right now? What can I do? Okay, number 1, I can do the breathing that I've just shown you. Number 2, I can leave the room and do something else, have a cup of tea or coffee or water. I can call a friend. I can change that state. And then I can start thinking about, okay, well, what can I do, for example, that would be really useful to my employer right now? What can I do that he can see that I'm valuable? Or maybe I can start looking for other opportunities. Or maybe I can be useful to one of my colleagues. Maybe I can help them. So now I'm starting to think about all the things that I can do. Okay, and what else can I do? And what else can I do? And suddenly all of that grows and all the possibility grows, as opposed to that monster. And, this thing about, okay, I can't change this, but what can I do? What can I do? And to me, that is just so powerful.
And you think it's that simple? If I just keep asking myself the question, what can I do? What can I do? Would I get answers? Because at times the fear just cripples us, and the worry is at its peak. So how do we shift our focus? How do we reframe ourselves from that anxiety and worry to thinking about what I cannot control versus what I can control?
In the end, your ultimate power is in your mind. Only you can decide where you're going to put your focus. I can't say, hey, Noman, you are not going to think about that now. You will think about this. No, that power is yours. Right. I can make the suggestion. I can say, hey, listen, Noman, what about this? And what about this? But the power and the beauty of that is that you can do that too. So you can choose, and actually your superpower is awareness. Because the moment you become aware of these things, that's when you can step back and go, right, okay, let's put this aside for now and let's focus on what I can actually do now. Right, this is a worry. Let me write it down. I'll put it down there. I'll worry about it later. What can I do now? I can do this and I can do this and what else and what else and what else, and keep focusing on that what else, and you will be amazed at the things that you actually come up with.
Right. And this gives me an interesting idea. Yeah. I can have a worry jar and I can have an actions jar. And I can, all my worries I can start putting in the worry jar, and all my actions I can start putting in my action jars. And I'm sure the worry jar would be full very, very soon, but the action jar would be empty. The target should be to make sure that the actions jar is as full as the worry jar, probably. So that's interesting. So first is get the control back through the breathing. Second is
Absolutely.
stop shifting your focus to what can I do? If my job is going, it's going. If my boss is upset, he's upset. If my spouse is probably angry because I forgot her birthday, well, that's definitely no go
That's a
in.
bad one. You don't want to do that.
That would give you worry for life. But yeah, take the deep breath in, and what can I do right now to make it up? So
Exactly. And how do I want to feel? How do I want to feel instead? And when
right,
I'm feeling like that, what's different? When,
right,
when in the past, when I'm feeling different, how am I feeling? And focusing on those feelings and bringing up those feelings for yourself, because that's what we do. Yeah. We're bringing up all those feelings through our imagination and our worry. We're bringing up all those negative fearful feelings. In the
right.
same way we do that, and we've practiced that a lot. Yeah.
True.
We've spent
Right,
years or months or weeks practicing
right,
to evoke all these feelings. So, okay, let's think about how I want to feel instead. And when are times that I have felt like that? And what's different when I'm feeling like that? And again, we're going to that same place, right? We're going to that different place. And we
right,
can do that. And we need to
right,
practice it. Instead
right.
of practicing all that negative stuff, let's practice, how do I want to feel instead? How do I want to think instead? What do I want to do instead? So we
Right.
have that power. And that's awesome, isn't it?
It is. It is. It is. So, what's the next tip?
And the next tip is, again, a very quick and easy one. And this is called cross-lateral stimulation. So for everybody that's watching us, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to grab something that you can hold in your hand. Like, for example, I have a bracelet on my arm, something that I can hold in my hand, or I have some hand cream on my table, or I have a nail set, anything that you can comfortably hold in your hand.
This would
Perfect.
do. Yeah.
What is it? What is that?
It's a box for my earpods. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yes, absolutely. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to put both your hands out in front of you with your object in
For
one.
my viewers, would a mobile phone do, or you suggest something slightly smaller?
I think a mobile is a bit clunky. It's better if it's something smaller that can just fit into your hand like that.
Alright. Okay.
Yeah?
Great. Guys, all those who are viewing, make sure you hold something in your hand. Let's try this out. Yeah. Let's
Okay.
see if it works. Yeah.
So you put your hands out in front of you, and you have your object in one hand. You open your arms. You bring it back together. Change hands and open your arms and bring it back together. And just keep doing that. Just keep doing it for as long as you want to, really. And as you're doing that, you will notice that you start to get into a bit of a rhythm. And as you get into this rhythm, you will notice that your breathing starts to become more even and more regular. And you can continue doing that for just as long as you want to. And when you're finished, you may even have a smile on your face, and you will feel that the anxiety has left your body, and you will feel calm and relaxed and amazing. And it's a very quick and easy tip that you can use anywhere, anytime. And the reason it works is because it is activating, that's why it's called cross-lateral stimulation, because it's activating the left side and right side of your brain and refocusing your attention.
Right. Interesting. Something as basic as this, because, people talk about meditation. There are some people who vouch for meditation, and there are some who says it just doesn't work for me. So something physical, something as basic as grabbing something, getting a place, and just doing, what was that? What lateral? All right, forget it. Just changing.
Cross body stimulation.
Cross body stimulation.
Cross your body, whatever it is. It
Great,
doesn't matter.
amazing. That's interesting. Corina, you also have an interesting audio, which is of 15 minutes, where if I don't want to do anything, I don't want to breathe, I don't want to do cross-body simulations, there is an audio that you were speaking about. You want to talk about that for our viewers?
Absolutely. It's just a 20 minute audio.
Audio, yeah.
Called, I think it's called Anxiety Relief, in fact. And it's basically just taking a few minutes every day just to really relax and calm your body, calm yourself, calm your mind, and release some of that anxiety. And the more you practice these things, as I mentioned earlier, we're so good at practicing all that bad stuff. The more we practice the good stuff, the more that becomes our default mode. The more that becomes when those moments of stress, panic, fear set in, then we can go to those things that we've been practicing and just breathe, or feel more in control, or focus our mind, or do whatever it is that we're doing to help ourselves. Yeah, and it's practice. But the audio, really, it's a 15-minute relaxation, deep relaxation, self-hypnosis audio to help us basically feel calm and relaxed and more in control. So that's what that's all about, and it's free. So
yeah, and I've posted the link in our comments, so do check the audio out. Not right now, a little bit later, once we are done with this with this episode, then you can go to it. Great. So and
can I just say one thing, Noman, because you just mentioned it, and I just wanted to address that quickly before we move on. This thing about not everything works for everybody. Different things work for different people, and that's why often it's a matter of trying out what works best for you. But all of these strategies are simple, easy to do, and they are powerful. All of my clients, when they use them, it works. And so it's a matter of using it, practicing it, and it will work.
Right. Yeah. And I was listening to a webinar this morning, and it said that it takes 32 days for a habit to really, really seep in. According to their research, there is a difference between 21 to 66, but 32 is the average. So yeah, practice it for 32 days. Corina, managers, leaders, bosses, how can they help their teams manage fear, anxiety, and avoid overwhelm in these times?
Well, I think that's a really important question. And again, to me, it's not rocket science. A lot of it is being human, having empathy, being there for your staff and your team members, support them during this time.
Right.
These, and people think, with anxiety, it's only senior leaders who experience this, or it's only these people. No, we all experience this. All of humanity, we all experience a certain level of anxiety at some point.
Right.
And in the end, it doesn't matter what causes it, because millions of things can cause it. But the same things will fix it, if that makes sense. So it doesn't matter whether you're a senior leader or somebody lower down the chain. The strategies that we use to eliminate anxiety and fear and overwhelm, those are all the same, because in the end, it's all about human functions, isn't it? It's human things going on.
Yeah.
So as I said, for managers and leaders, share these tips with them. Share these tips and also perhaps, create boundaries within your teams. Communicate how you're going to work in this new environment. Make it clear that actually, working 24/7 and being on call 24/7 should not be acceptable to anybody, because It's not good for the leaders and the managers, and it's not good for the staff, and it creates stress, it creates anxiety. And when we are working from a place of stress and anxiety, we are not performing at our best because we are working from a survival mode, from a mode of fear. What did I explain right at the beginning? Your critical, analytical mind shuts down. So we're not performing at our best. So whatever we can do to reduce that stress, and as I said, having empathy, being supportive, creating new rules, for want of a better word.
Normal, as they say, and new rules so that
creating new routines and guidelines of how to best work in this new environment, based on this knowledge that I'm sharing with you now.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. And in the beginning of this episode, you spoke about the beasts from the past, the of our forefathers through which we've gone through the evolution. So stop being a beast, right? don't cause anxiety. This is an interesting chat we are having, Corina. I would now take a few questions, and there's an interesting one from a friend, client, Xuhair Qizilbash is his name. What's the relationship between stress and anxiety?
Well, that's a good question. Basically, stress, again, it's a natural reaction of our body, usually to an outside external trigger. And it's, again, if I can give that example of our ancestors, we're walking nicely through the bush and everything's nice and peaceful and lovely, and all of a sudden the lion comes. Ooh. The survival instinct sets in immediately. Yeah. And that's stress. So all of it, it's also known as the survival response, is also known as the stress response. So it's basically all interlinked. But the stress is created through, nowadays, as we've mentioned, not the lions and the tigers and all those things, but through those everyday things, the deadlines, the bosses, the coronavirus, the wife in the background, the kids in the background, all of those things. That's what's creating the stress or the anxiety or the worry. It's those outside things. And the thing that we need to do is become aware of it. We need to become aware of how we feel and how we respond. And then we can take control of it. Because as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter what the cause is. The way that we respond and the way that we can fix it is the same.
Right.
I hope that answers your question.
To an extent, yeah. And I'll just go to the next one. Shahina, she says, are there coping factors to help deal effectively with anxiety? This was much before you shared the tips. So you've shared some tips. And I believe we would be announcing next week a free in-depth webinar where we will go much more deeper into
absolutely
dealing.
I'll share with you the stock technique on that,
sure.
Which is one of my favorites and also very, very powerful technique. But there are so many strategies that we can actually use to help ourselves cope during times when we're feeling anxious.
Right, amazing. So Shahina, stay tuned. We would come to it. We have Jane, and then she says, hi Corina, don't you think that the isolation creates negative self-talk because we don't have other people to bounce off? Big issue these days, all those colleagues that we were dying to run away from them. We're missing them. Friends, we suddenly realize that, why humans are called the social animals. So
yes, absolutely. And what Jane has just mentioned here is a very, very important point, because we're constantly talking to ourselves, right? But if I can ask you, Noman, how often are you telling yourself good things? Most of that is what Jane has mentioned there, is the negative self-talk. Oh my gosh, you're so stupid. Oh, for goodness sake, couldn't you just get that right? Oh man, I'm such an idiot, or whatever the case is. Oh, I can't do this. And again, we start to recycle that. We have all these negative conversations with ourselves, and the stress and the anxiety and all those feelings start to grow. So monitoring that self-talk is very, very important. And again, it's becoming aware of it. And the moment you become aware, you can start to do things to change it. And we'll talk more about that in our webinar, Noman.
The stop technique, yeah. So and as Corina mentions, especially because of isolation, and this term was so misleading, right? Social distancing. Thankfully, a lot of people have now changed it to physical distancing, right? It's not social distancing. You still need to connect socially. You could connect to the screen probably, but we need to make that effort. And I remember that famous Harvard study where they spoke about happiness, and they tracked people for 75 years. And one thing which came down to the root cause of happiness was relationships and the quality of your relationships. So that's so important. Yeah?
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because from the moment we are born to the moment that we die, our self-esteem, our self-belief, who we are, centers around the relationships that we have, and they start from the moment that we are born. So those relationships, our relationships, that's what makes us human. And that's why this time of isolation is so difficult for so many people, because we're not meant to be on our own. We're not meant to be isolated. Even if we are now suddenly stuck with our partners and our families for 24/7, which is, well, great for some, not so great for others, but whatever it is, we still need those other connections. As humans, we need all of these connections, because that's what makes us human and interesting and creative and all these wonderful things that we are.
Yeah. And, just this morning I was reading this book by Tim Ferriss. It's Tools of Titan, where he's brought about all his podcasts into one big book, and it has different chapters where different experts are talking. And interestingly, one of the experts mentions about the 5 chimp principle, where he says in zoology, the 5 chimpanzees, their behavior is exactly similar to the 5 other chimpanzees that they're hanging out with. So choose your chimpanzees properly, because a lot of negative self-talk has also come into a lot of people around us. I've started just putting people who are sending me the daily scorecards of people dying from corona. I've started actually muting those WhatsApps,
Absolutely. And that's such an important point. Actually, I did write that down somewhere, to limit that news, because we're being bombarded with all these negative messages all the time. And the more we read about it, the more we trigger the stress response, the survival response, and we go into fear. And then we're not functioning properly because we're in survival mode. And we're like, I'm going to die. And it's like, okay.
Or the economy is crashing, or the job's not going. Yeah.
Exactly. So, very important point.
That's interesting. Yeah. We have Zan is a colleague of mine. He says, "Hey, Corina, great to see you on Funworks Media. We would inshallah have Corina more coming in." This is before I come to this one. This is an interesting one. You did speak about the physical reactions of anxiety, and then that getting connected with the mental process. So Rakesh, he was in Dubai just like you. He's left Dubai and now he's in Switzerland. Rakesh,
nice.
Can food allergies cause anxiety?
Oh, absolutely, yes, absolutely. The food that we eat is so important, and again, it's one of those things that's underrated. We hear people say, "Oh yeah, what you eat has an effect on how you feel, etc., etc."
Yeah.
But actually, the power of food is huge. So and we're eating, even if you think you're eating healthy, I really, really recommend to take a deep look at what you're eating and what's going on, because there's so many processed things that we can't even pronounce in our foods. And things that are not good for us. And of course, there's also individual things that people react to. But as a whole, there's foods that make us feel anxious, and that's maybe because your body has maybe you're intolerant, maybe you maybe you have an allergy or something. But yes, food is definitely something to look at. If
it's
everything
just,
else is,
1 cup of coffee is okay, but 2 cups for me in an hour, for people, for others, I know they could just survive on coffee. I mean, 2 cups of coffee in an hour would get my anxiety through the roof. So
yes,
you're right.
exactly, exactly. And
then
sugar,
these
for
triggers,
example, is another one.
yeah, and then these triggers then create that whole vicious cycle where you get anxiety and then you get thoughts and you're crippled and then you go on. This is an interesting one. And you deal with a lot of senior executives, right? You deal with a lot of ambitious people, and Ahmed is asking. Ahmed has been with us since the beginning of this episode. He's asking, is being ambitious the biggest reason creating stress?
I wouldn't say it's the biggest reason, but it can certainly be a reason. For sure, for sure. We find it a lot with senior executives because they're always pushing and striving and trying to reach that next level and that next expectation and then next deadline and whatever. So they're constantly working on that overdrive and that adrenaline, which should only be there for survival. We only need the adrenaline in certain circumstances. We don't need it all the time.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. How do you deal with it? Don't be ambitious. Don't think of growth. Just stay where you are. Get stuck.
No, of course. No. Same as all the other things that we've already discussed, and of course many more besides. So, if anybody here wants to have more of a conversation, they're more than welcome to get in touch with me and have a deeper conversation about it, because I've obviously given a couple of tips here, which are some of my favorites, but there are so many levels of things that we can actually do to help manage and eliminate anxiety. A lot of my clients, they come to me with quite severe depression even, and anxiety is one of the often anxiety and depression go together, and a lot of anxiety turns into depression.
Right.
And a lot of my clients come to me and, they leave and they can live a very normal, happy, thriving life. And it's the same with anxiety. We don't have to live with this fear all the time. Even in fearful times, even when times are challenging and difficult, we can still manage those emotions.
Right. So that's her name on the screen. Google her, LinkedIn her, and get connected. And then I promise you, Qarina is a great person to get in touch with, to just connect. And it's not just about this being a sales pitch. I know she's helped people with business agenda or without business agenda. This is an interesting one, Qarina. So how to deal when we're overwhelmed or underperforming? And if I'm able to understand this question, this is that vicious circle, because I've been there once. That vicious circle when you have these beasts, you have these deadlines, you have a lot of things pending, and then you need to perform, but the anxiety kicks in. And somehow it cripples you, and you start getting overwhelmed, and you have deadlines, but you're still running away from them, and the vicious circle kicks in, and you go more underperforming and more negative self-talk. What do we do with
Absolutely, and that's exactly what it is. And I've been talking about the fight and flight response, but actually it's called the freeze fight and flight response. And why is that? Because when we go back to our ancestors, sometimes to pretend you're dead might actually save you in some cases than to run or to fight. So yes, and that that is exactly what happens. You go into that moment of overwhelm and you just freeze because you feel like it's just too much and you can't cope and you can't do anything, and everything shuts down. So it keeps coming back to that space whatever it is, whether it's the anxiety, the depression, the worry, the stress, whatever the trigger is, the result is the same in our body, in our physical body. We go into freeze, fight, and flight, into survival mode and we don't function at our best. And that's why it's so important to learn the techniques. You know,
Right.
Shahina and those that have asked these questions, take the techniques that I've suggested today and practice them. Really practice them. See what happens over a week when you actually consciously every day practice them 3 to 5 times a day. See how you feel different. See how you respond different. And and you'll see there is a difference. But the difference is in taking control of those thoughts, feelings, and emotions, becoming aware of them. And once you become aware, then you can take action, and then you can change it. And once you change it, then you can perform at your best again, because you can be at your best. None of us can, you know, if you take a sportsman, training for the Olympics, yeah, they train. They do the Olympics, they do their final competition, and what do they do when they're finished with that?
They celebrate.
They celebrate, and they take a break.
They take a break. Yes.
They take a break because they cannot continue working at that level all the time. We need to take a break. So when you're working towards that deadline, you know, if you look at the kids writing exams at school, they'll have a month and they're working so hard. They're studying and they're working and they write the exams. And what happens after the exams?
They take a break.
They take a break. They have a holiday.
Right.
Because you need to be able to recuperate, because your body cannot work at that level all the time. You have to take a break. And
Corina, we have deadlines upon deadlines, sadly.
Exactly. And so you have to build those breaks into your everyday life. Every day you need to make sure you take some time to recuperate. You need to take some time to just switch off. And if that's 10 minutes or half an hour lunch break, a deadline when you stop working, you have to be able to recuperate, because if you don't, you will go into overwhelm, you will go into anxiety, you will not perform at your best, and you will go into that vicious cycle. So finding ways to work in breaks into your day, finding ways to energize yourself, to feel good, to eat healthily. So important. One of the guys who spoke about that earlier, you know, eating healthily. So important. Sleep, getting good sleep. If we don't sleep properly, you know, sleep deprivation is a form of torture in some countries, in prisons. Yeah.
Right.
We need to get good sleep. Otherwise, anxiety, fear, overwhelm, depression will set in. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of our bodies, and we have to become aware of it. Because only when we are aware can we do something about it. If we keep working on auto mode all the time, we will burn out.
Yeah, true. And we would have lots of other practical tips, actions that you could take in the webinar that we are doing. So stay connected to Funworks. Do make sure that you like our page on Facebook, and you like our YouTube channel. Just subscribe, press that bell icon, just so that you're updated, nothing else. We won't bombard you with updates, just that you're updated whenever something comes live. But Corina, before I end, and then Zohra says, a great point, Corina, taking and giving a break is important. That's a good one. Taking and giving a break is also very, very important.
Yes.
But Corina, before we end, all those who are with us live right now, if you have any questions related to overwhelm, fear, anxiety, please post them. So a last question from my side, Corina. Sleep. You mentioned about some tips to manage your anxiety. A lot of friends, a lot of family members. I'm listening from a lot of people who say that just because they're home, they're not getting physically tired. They're not probably getting, or maybe they're extremely mentally tired. They're unable to sleep in these work from home environments and lockdowns environments. Some tips for sleep management and having a better sleep?
Absolutely. Again, as I said, eating healthily, super important. Drinking lots of water, super important. But one of the things we touched on earlier, limit your news intake. Make sure you know what's going on, but maybe you watch the news in the morning once a day, maybe enough. You don't have to watch it all the time, every 10 minutes or half an hour or whatever. Limit your news intake, especially before you're going to bed. And maybe before you go to bed, switch off your mobile for a while. Do something that's going to boost your mood, something that's going to make you feel good, like having a hot bath, relaxing, having a nice cup of, I don't know, hot tea, something that relaxes you and makes you feel good. Then the second thing will be structure your day. Make sure you get up, you exercise, you eat, you sleep at the same time every day. So your body, because we're training our body, so we have to train our body to do these things right. Remember when you've got little babies and you're trying to teach them to sleep, we put them into a routine so that they can get used to sleeping. Make sure your bed is a place of calmness, of sleep. Don't have your phones, your computers. Don't work in your bed because your brain makes that connection. Oh, I need to be working now, or I need to be active now. No, your brain needs to make the connection. This is my place of rest. Right. And that's the other thing. You can, if you're waking up at night or you're battling to go to sleep, focus on rest rather than sleep. Okay, I'm just going to rest and I'm just going to focus on my breathing, and I'll just breathe in and out and in and out. And you can just focus on that breathing and you will feel how you become much more calm and much more relaxed, just as you're doing that.
Right.
And then, as I said, learn to relax. Learn ways and techniques to relax, whether that's meditation, whether that's self-hypnosis, whether that's deep breathing, whatever. There's lots of relaxation techniques that we can learn. And the other thing is, because your bed is not supposed to be a battleground. Your bed is supposed to be a place, when I go to bed at night, it is my favorite place in the world. It's like, oh, bed, wonderful. I love it. It's so good. And so that's what it should be. So if you feel like you're waking up and you've tried everything and you've done all the right things, get out of bed and practice your sleep routine again. Don't go doing active stuff and wake yourself up. Practice your sleep routine and then go back to bed. So you're training your brain to sleep.
Wow.
Listen, dude, this is sleep time.
Right, yeah. And as I say, we're creatures of habits. So the brain needs to know when we're sleeping and when we are up. And then rightly said, the bed should not be a battleground. The bed should not be your office. The bed should not be, you're just going to the bed to sleep, to relax, So that's interesting, yeah. We had quite a few people online. I don't have any more questions. All those who are still with us, please do share your comments. How did you like this episode? And if there is anything that you would like to learn more, because we would be doing a free webinar post-Eid through the Funworks platform, and Qarina will join us live from UK. So Qarina, if I conclude, right, anxiety is that physical and a mental process that kicks in, and it's in us because that's how we've evolved, right? There used to be beasts when we were living in the jungle and hunting, and now those beasts would attack, and we would probably either freeze, flight, or fight. Those beasts have changed. Now we have deadlines, we have bosses, we have worries, we have concerns, we have job losses, or we have fear of job losses. We have a husband or a wife being very, very angry or upset about something. We have We have worries about our child's future. So the beasts have changed, but the beasts still cause the same anxiety, and then physically and mentally starts crippling us. So taking it and then you need, when all this happens, you need to have tips, you need to have mechanisms, you need to have processes that you shared, and then great tips on anxiety and then sleeps. Very basic, but very interesting. I've tried the cross-body simulation and it really works, so I'm going to share it for people that do try it. And then great tips on creating boundaries, creating the breaks. So thank you very much for a great program. Last comments, your 2 cents, you're concluding your Oscar speech, the brief one. Yeah.
I would say my last words is, you know what, guys, whatever's happening, you don't have to live with anxiety and fear all the time. Even when times are hard, you can do something about it. And I just so encourage you to reach out to, whether it's a friend, a coach, a therapist, whoever. Reach out, talk to somebody, learn the tools, learn the strategies, and have a good life, because we only have one life, and we're not meant to live that life in fear and overwhelm all the time. And you have total ability to manage that and to eliminate it and get rid of it.
Yeah, great. So we have Ahmed saying, good one is expected. Ahmed and Xuhair, they both were with us since the beginning. There were many others who were there with the beginning. So Xuhair says, thanks for a very informative session. More coming your way. Keep connected to our YouTube channel or my Facebook account, and we will be bringing in many more Bizverds. I would be ending this episode right now with the same comments that I started with. I hope you're thriving and not just surviving. So thrive and not just survive, because that's not what we are here to do. Thank you very much. Hope to see you for our next Bizverds. Thank you again, and thank you, Corina, for your time and joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.